And I believe we're live.
Live. Good morning, Jason
Good,
Goldsworthy.
good morning, Matthew. How are you?
Doing very good, thank you. It's a beautiful sunny day here in this part of Canada for now. We'll see what the rest of the day brings.
Oh,
Welcome, everybody out there in Facebook land, wherever Facebook land is your land. Welcome to a discussion between myself and Jason. And, still lots happening on the planet right now. Lots happening as a result of what's happening with the other planets around us too. People are feeling the influence. I still am conversing with people who are feeling the changes on the planet, and yeah, it's bringing up feelings of anxiety for people. It's bringing up some concerns and worries for people, and this week in terms of Gene Key's influences and pulses, we're in the pulse of the 21st Gene Key, and it's all about this. It's about letting go of the need for control, right, in certain areas of our life, and learning what we can control, and then from there, stepping into what's called the gift of authority, which is coming from a place of true surrender and becoming our own inner authority too. So I feel there's lots to discuss around this because I don't know about you, Jason, but I do meet and myself have had this throughout my life. I've had definitely a lot of worry and anxiety in my times, and it almost always came down to trying to control things that maybe were beyond my control. And it was learning to put the focus on the things where I could control, which was quite often as simple as my own breath. And I'm sure in your time too, Jason, you've seen this issue of letting go of control is coming up. Well, with students too, right? People who are
absolutely, absolutely. So, good morning to the Canadians. Good morning, Dawn. Good morning, Cindy, and good morning to anyone else who's from Canada. Good morning to and good evening. Good evening to everyone in Europe and anyone that's popping in from England. Good evening to you too. Yeah, control. Yeah, if I go back quite a few number of years before I changed my job, before I decided to take a different path, before I decided to take this spiritual journey, I used to think I was in control of everything. I wanted everything to be in control. I'd be mapping things out. I'd be making my plan, working as many hours as possible, and making sure that just making sure that ends were meeting. And I was always worrying about the things that I was trying to control, and that was way back then. Where I thought, well, worrying about tomorrow, worrying about what if tomorrow I should be doing it this way or should be doing it that way, or trying to make things happen, or felt that I had to like try and move things and make this life happen. And it wasn't until I got quite ill at quite a young age, and when I got ill, I realised that that wasn't in my control. And
Mm.
um, and when I was ill, I was lying there thinking, yeah, well, what about everything's got to be done? Because I was a chef then. I thought somebody's got to be cooking, and well, somebody else turned up and did the cooking, and people just pitched in, and some people did the salads, and some people did that. And so, just when you think that you are the key element to either a company, or either you're a key element to a certain workplace or whatever, when you find that you're ill and you cannot do anything, you find out, well, hold on, life does continue and things do get done and things get sorted out even when they're totally out of your control. Now that was a big
Mm-hmm.
shift for me way back then, and since then I notice a lot of students coming in with the same things. They're trying to control their contact with spirit world. They're trying to control the information that's coming through, and really the least amount of control that you can have, the better it all works, the better your
Mm-hmm.
intuition works.
Yeah.
What about you, Matthew? If you go back to your earlier days and you remember being wanting to control things, wanting to have things in your control.
Dude, I'm still a control freak.
Ah,
No, I can definitely notice. Even it's like it's like I'm so much better than I used to be, but I could still notice things that come up, and sometimes it's subtle things. And even just last night, I was having this dream, and in the dream, I was really quite angry, and I felt, if anything, what I really felt in the dream was a complete lack of control. Right? That's why I was angry in this dream. And then I woke up to the sound of our dog, and she was whining, and it was very early in the morning, and I didn't want to get up, and I just wanted her to be quiet. And I realized straight away, first thing in the morning, here, before I allow myself to kind of become self-aware, I was in that place of wanting to control how the dog was. And then, so I just became aware of that in that moment. And I feel that's the key, is like, to me, it's not something that I've just mastered it completely right now in my life at all. It's like there's sometimes these really subtle ways. It was a case like some of the more obvious ways in the past, but now it's some of these more subtle ways in which I'm still doing it. And what you're saying about the intuition piece too is that I feel a lot of times that folks have intuition about things coming in, but it's either like they have fear about what they're intuiting, and so it becomes this anxiety, or they're not fully allowing themselves, so they feel this sense of anxiety, and they actually feel, they don't know why they feel it. They haven't got a reason to feel this anxiety. It's like, my life's perfect, the weather's perfect, everything's going so well, why am I feeling this anxiety? And like you're saying, is like, as they let go of the need to control it, suddenly they're receiving downloads and insights, and there's intuitive information coming through. And so often it's like we feel anxiety and we feel worry and we feel like, oh, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And it's like, well, maybe there isn't anything wrong with you at all. Maybe there's actually something that, as you let go of this need for control, that something is going to come through that is going to actually support you on your journey, or it could support others on their journey. And I'm sure, yeah, you've seen this in your circles, and I know the circles that I'm part of too, where there's, in fact, we've done circles where at the beginning of the circle, everyone's feeling this sense of like, oh, something feels ungrounded, something feels the and something feels anxious or something like that. And then it's like, okay, we think this is what we're going to do in this session, but it's almost like the spirit in the room has got a completely different idea. And as we let go of control, it's like certain things will play out exactly as they need to. And so I don't know about you too, but it's like if somebody comes in with an intention or a question and they just release that out, sometime during that session, somebody else will say something that will connect to that question, or the person facilitating might answer that question without even it being posed out loud. So to me, it's like when we can become aware of that feeling of anxiousness, it's an opportunity for us to, again, return to breath, return to awareness, and not to immediately judge ourselves like there's something wrong with me here, and to really open up to, yeah, what's seeking to come through at this time. Because when you were talking about your illness, really that's what was happening for you, wasn't it? It's like you were feeling the anxiety and feeling ill, but it was like there was something,
You had to
there was,
release
yeah,
release
and there was
release
something coming
control.
through.
So Cindy
Yeah.
Williams says, big topic for me, big control freak. Have though over the last several years been working on this most, and I've gotten a lot better, but it's tough. Yeah, Cindy, I know what that's like, because when I go back to where I used to be, and how I used to think, that's exactly how I felt. It's like, how can I let go of that control? I mean, you even control. A lot of people some people like to control what they eat. Some people like to control their stuff. Some people want to control their lives. Erica says, what would say are supple versus the obvious ways of control? So then, yeah, okay, you want to control your life, but some things in life you can't control. Now we're taught and we're brought up in life to like keep your eye on the ball, because if you don't keep your eye on the ball, you might miss it, right? And when something like a situation comes into life where you get ill, and all you can do is let go and surrender, and you realize that life continues and everything gets sorted out and people start pitching in. You didn't expect all that to happen because in your mind you felt you had to keep the eye on the ball, you had to keep things working, you had to be getting all these things done in the right way. And it can be very very nerve wracking, and you can get the anxiety of thinking, yeah, but I have to organize everything, I need to have it all right, and if I don't have it organized and I don't have it right, then it won't work. But I've found in moments where you really have no control over things in your life that it still works, it still falls into place. Um, and everything. I like your bit, Erica, about very true about the intuition and anxiety, because when you've got anxiety and you're using your intuition and mediumship and you want to control the information that's coming through, you end up putting the brakes on it. So you won't be, when your mind is trying to control what's coming through. I have to work in this certain way. I have to bring it through in this certain way. I have to be this certain way for it to work. You don't release to the infinite possibilities of what spirit world can bring. And you don't release to the infinite possibilities of what wisdom can come through you, what insights can come through you, what Matthew was talking about, the insights that if you release control of, that you have to control what's coming through, you make it up to a much bigger ability of like coming through. I say to students these days, forget everything you've learned when you make your next contact. Forget everything you've learned. Why? Because if you think you're going to work the same way as you worked every other time because it works, then you might be missing a little bit more of that infinite possibilities which is possible to come through. And that's quite an amazing thing. Did you want to jump in here, Matthew?
Yeah, the when you were just talking about the infinite possibilities of what comes through spirit, it was reminding me of something that in a mediumship circle the other week we were doing mediumship, and one of the things that we were doing is, and this was something you taught us, was that it was just kind of, instead of so we were all doing a dam, right? We were all doing a dam in the circle, and the old me would have been like, okay, I would have connected with something beforehand, right? And just had it prepped before I got up, right? But the new me and the experience of other people in that room too was just like, you might not have anything while you're sitting down there, but as soon as you stand up into the presence of it, suddenly it's like, oh, there's somebody there, right? And the other week I stood up and I was about to give this talk, and I had this clear, oh, okay, I got this guy, he's very confident. And then at the same time, I felt this real nervousness and this lump in my throat. And I was like, this is unlike me. I mean, I do a lot of public speaking, so I don't tend to get nervous from the public speaking. And then I just felt like, oh, this dude's gonna get me to say stuff I don't want to say. And I didn't say it at that point, but afterwards, talking to the people with who it was for, I was like, I just felt like he was going to get me to say things that were totally inappropriate. And they're like, yep, that's who he was. And so it's like, that's what we find is when we control it too. It's like we feel like spirit will express in this particular way or that particular way, but it's like as it comes through, it can really blow our minds, right? And it's like it can really take us to a place that it can bring out qualities in us that we never knew we had. It can bring out a way of expressing ourselves that we never knew we had. And oftentimes we don't know until we step into that moment, right? It's like even before coming on our calls, that's something we relinquish, is any need for controlling the direction of the call. And any inspired speaker that you connect with, you will find that what they do is, as they're speaking, they will just allow the images and the stories to come to them that they will share. And that happens for us sharing this. So it's like in that moment. But if we tried to control it, if we were scripted from start to finish, I'm not sure it would flow in the same kind of way. And so, that's something that definitely I hear people talking about is as they let go of that need for control, that things do flow, right? It's like, and it's like when we're trying to control things, we're putting all the trust in ourselves, and literally we're putting it in this little nugget here, and trying to think through solutions based upon our conditioned mind, which can only come up with ways of doing things that it already knows or that other people already know. But like you're saying, when you open up to the spirit, when you allow the spirit to be that source, it's like, holy bajoli, there's all these thoughts and ideas that I've never had before, and solutions and possibilities. And, for me, in an area in my life where I had to let go of control so much was around how I attracted money into my life. And, there was a time when I was so focused as like, okay, I want it to look like this and I want it to look like that. And when your mind is so focused on the way it's going to look on the outside, and you forget about how you want to feel on the inside, it becomes that kind of control, and you can get locked off the possibilities. But now there's much more of that openness, and it's like, oh wow, okay, where's what's going to happen today, what's going to unfold today, and then there's things coming out left, right, all areas. And if I was trying to control what it looked like, then it wouldn't make it. I wouldn't see half the opportunities that show up. But what I'm always able to do is just return to what I'm noticing inside of me. So usually, if I'm in trying to control something, it's like I can feel tension in my body. I can feel tension in my neck, or I can feel tension in my abdomen.
Exactly.
I even feel tension in my jaws or my feet. These aren't my feet, but my hands too. So it's like, it's any time that need for control comes up. And somebody was asking about that, the subtle ways in which we control. I would say that if we can become aware of how our body is responding when it becomes rigid, that's a good indication that we're in that place of control. And that if we can bring awareness to it, it's like, okay, what's causing me to be rigid here? Why am I clenching my jaw? Why am I clenching my fists? That kind of thing. And bring that awareness into it. I feel that's how we can begin to surrender. And in that surrender, it's like, now we're putting trust in spirit, God, whatever you want to call that thing that guides that higher power. Yeah. And as you do so, it's just like there's infinite possibilities. There's nothing that we cannot do when we recognize our connection to all of this, all of life.
I like that, Matthew. I like that because I have quite a full agenda. So I mean, I get everything planned in because I like to have things under control. But just when you think you've got everything planned in, then suddenly you get rang up about someone's house, that some things that you need to go over there, just sort it out, and then something else goes wrong, you need to go and sort that out, and you just need to prop it in. You think, and if you'd have known that you had to do that as well, your mind might have had a nervous breakdown with like, you mean I've got to do all this as well, because you're seeing this big mountain of stuff that you've got to do. And but life has a funny way of throwing extra bits at you when you least expect it, and that's when you have to get into the deep surrender. Esmeralda said wanted to control her grief but can't anymore, and it's okay. And Esmeralda, I know what it's like. I mean, a grief period is just like, it needs time, and everyone's different, and that's the thing. It's a question of like taking the time to heal, taking the time to go through the process, and that's okay, and some people may deal with it in one way, and some people may deal with it another way, and the main thing is dealing it in your own personal way is the best way to do it, and that's the best way to go through it as well. So I wish you a lot of strength for that. Cindy says,
Yeah.
I do say that the training with you and the other stuff has been very helpful in learning how to let go of that control, letting go of trust. Well, thank you, Cindy. That's nice to hear.
Letting go of trust? I think you mean learning to trust.
Learning to trust. Yeah, you're pretty good there.
Trust. Trust is actually your friend.
Yeah, trust your friend, and trust is a friend. And then we've got a good example. Matthew helps me understand the feelings that I may think may not fit. Thank you. Oh, that's a good one, Matthew.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? I think we haven't really Esmeralda was kind of cluing into it, or cueing us into it, actually. That the emotional side of things, that's where, and you and I, Jason, we're both from England, right? We
Yeah,
got really stiff upper lips there.
yeah.
So we hold those emotions tight and we control tight. And it took me a long time. I didn't grieve the loss of my granddad until I was.
I think we've lost you, Mike, Matthew. So we've lost Matthew. That's a shame. Anyway, so hopefully the technical difficulties will get wrong, but obviously this is outside of our control and very on subject of what's going on at the moment. And you know what? Yeah, Matthew, that was out of your control, but we lost you all the way since you mentioned the word granddads.
Oh, okay.
So just surrender to that, please.
Yeah, that was granddad playing around with me then.
Yeah.
I was just saying on the subject of grief there that I didn't grieve my granddad until I was about 27 years old. He died when I was 12 or 11, I think. I can't remember exactly. But when he died, I just, I didn't see that grief being modeled to me in any way that, and so I learned to control those emotions, those feelings. And so when it came out at 27, boy, I didn't have any control of it then. And I just wept and wept. And what Esmeralda was saying there, and Don was alluding to as well, is that those emotions, when we allow ourselves to feel them and surrender to them, they become a connection to our divine source, right? And it's like they, a lot of times people, and I've heard it a few times this week, and it's usually guys talking about women like this and saying that, oh, they're too emotional. And it's like, maybe those emotions are actually something that they need to feel, and maybe those emotions are connecting to that, to a deeper source within them, because it tends to be the guys that are we're the ones more likely to control those emotions. And I learned to do that, and it was detrimental to me in so many ways. I could feel this sadness sitting inside of me, but I was afraid that if I let go of control, that suddenly I would just be caught up in that for my whole life. But our bodies and the natural natural rhythms within our body allow us such that, it's like, again, that's not something we have control over. Is like, there's times when the grief comes up in waves, and then it ebbs and flows like that. But it's like, oh, just simply allowing it to be is a source of creativity in our lives, right? The people who have transmuted grief in their own time and in their own way have become masters at helping others to be able to, and have also written some potent poetry, and they've become really potent speakers. They're people that are so deeply connected there, and they've had to take out any of that self-judgment. And so for me, I used to control all that. People would say to me, I see a deep sadness in you. And I didn't feel like I had anything to be sad about, but I agreed with them. But I was just I was just trying to lock it down. But now I see that the sadness that I feel, and it still comes on, is like, I can't judge it, because when I feel that sadness, it's taking me deeper into my creative process, right? It's like, it's a gestation process. Anytime that I've let that wave of sadness pass, then my creativity has just gone through the roof. Whereas if I try to control it and try to fix it, that's the thing we want to do. I got to fix this sadness. I got to fix this. And when I fix the sadness, all it becomes is depression, right? Exactly. And then it's like, then it becomes harder to climb out of it. But exactly. When we just allow it, just like, hey, I'm surrendering to this sadness, it's like, oh boy, look what's coming out of this. It's like, what's being created here.
I like what you're saying there, Matthew, because there's a lot of people that will, whatever emotion it is, they want to control it. They'll swallow it. They'll keep it within inside, instead of letting it be. And anything that you try to control, like if you do not let your frustration come out, it becomes anger. If you do not let your anger come out, it becomes aggression. And it's the same with grief as well. You know, I mean, if you're feeling sad and you let your sadness look at you, you can be enormously sad. You can become depressed. You can become all these different things if you don't let yourself surrender to the feelings that you're allowed to feel, right? And part of the healing process is surrendering to the feelings that you have, and surrendering to these feelings that you can say, okay, if I surrender to these feelings, then I can move forward, then I can heal. And in the acceptance, the healing happens. In the acceptance of, okay, I'm allowed to be this way, I'm allowed to feel this way, I'm allowed to think this way, I'm allowed to be this way. That's accepting yourself right now for who you are at this moment. And that surrender to the acceptance of who you are, and say, you know, looking at yourself as a work in progress and not seeing yourself as the finished result, right? Is surrendering yourself to the process of life, surrendering yourself to the way that the flow is going in your life at this moment. And there may be things coming up in your life at this moment that may feel like blocks, and they may feel like they're in the way, and they may be emotional, and they may be frustrating, and there may be all these things, and it may be too much work, or it might be all these things. But when you can surrender to the process, you know, and just say, okay, then I am here today, and tomorrow I'll be somewhere else. But if I can accept that I'm here today and work through this, then the next day will be a better day. The next day can be a different day. Sarah Sachs has written something in here, I see. In my mediumship, the most painful grief I deal with is a lot of people losing loved ones to gun violence. That's really sad. And suicide is the second. And I heard our mayor speak in a panel about Pittsburgh banning assault weapons. My first thought was maybe I have fewer of these readings. They can take so much of out of me, and that's really sad, Sarah. And you know, and that's something that is also out of our control, right? And maybe if we had more control, we could bring about a change. But we haven't got that much control, and when you can accept even those things that seem to be limiting our country, seem to be limiting our experience, seem to be limiting our life. It's like, you know, when you can release the fact that you cannot change that because it's too far away from you. The only thing you can change is that feeling and that understanding of yourself and what's within, and how you share that with the outside. So when you really deep surrender to saying, okay, this is where it is. Because I remember one time in life, something happened. Like we had finances went really bad one time, and we just, you know, everything, and it was just like, how are we going to get out of this? Now I could have just, you know, got depressed and thought, I'm going to give up, but instead of that, I say, when in deep water, become a diver. So what I did was thought, right, what have I got? Okay, we've got this. So ended up budgeting, doing stuff, cancelling things, doing that, and just working day to day on the minimal things. And I'm working day to day on the minimal things. I must say, we did a lot of things that don't cost money. And the big insight I got out of it was, some of the most important things don't really need to cost money. Some of the most important things in life you can't buy. And, you know, friendship, you cannot buy friendship. You cannot buy love. You cannot buy compassion. You cannot buy family. You know, you can't buy that trueness of it. And realizing that those things, you know, those things are free. And okay, so we had to go vegetarian for a while. You know, there was less meat on the plate, but that was just also a process where you can say, you might look at the big process and think you'll never come out of it. And that's how it looked to me at the time, because I was a worrier back then. But what I found out is, when you felt that you've dropped down so low, there is always only the way up. And that was my comfort. I think, well, you can't get lower than this, so there must be only a way up, and that way up has been going up ever since. And it's only that belief in the self that shifted, in the belief in, okay, it doesn't matter what life throws at me now. All I can do is go up. All I can do is continue. Step by step, I will climb my stairs. Step by step, I will become what I need to become, or things will change the way they used to change. And with losing own personal loved ones to very, very strange circumstances, Sarah, that were totally out of my control, which if I wanted to, and I would have liked to have controlled it or changed it or still have them here because they actually chose their own path to leave this planet. I had to give up, to surrender to the fact that that's yet something else that was out of my control. And all I could do was accept the fact that I was there whenever I could be there, and I supported whenever I could be supported. And I think the main thing is to remember is we can only be, as mediums, as people, as human beings, we can only be the best version of ourselves today. And maybe we're more emotional today than we are the next day, but in that way we can help, and we can help other people, and we can help ourselves and help our families within the situations we're in. So I think the main thing is just to keep going, and doing the good work. What do you think, Matthew?
Yeah, I feel what Sarah is saying there, and to me as well, it's like I've seen this through other mediums, and it's like the more they've surrendered to it, the more, yeah, sometimes, Nicole, who does this day in, day out, um, she has such a vast number of experiences coming to her, and she's really fine-tuned her. I can't speak to your process with it, Jason, but I can speak to what I see with her with
Hmm.
it. And it's like, yes, she still does get some cases where there's so much grief in there, and it all seems like it's been such training ground for her compassion, as she's able to go so deep, and like we were talking about emotions and being able to connect and feel, and if those kinds of people are showing up for Sarah, and I don't know you, Sarah, personally, but I get a sense of who you are. There must be some deep compassion that you're sharing with others for these people to be showing up for you. And the it's like the people that I've seen that have been the most accurate in mediumship, and the most that have had the most depth and connection with people. They've gone through some pretty big initiations in their lives themselves, where they've had to go feel deep into their own grief and deep into their own experiences. Nicole lost two of her best friends when she was 18 years old. They both died 6 months apart from each other. One was, I think, meningitis, and the other one was I can't remember what the other one was, but it was very sudden and not due to anything these girls were doing. And it's like you got to wonder, is like, was this something that they concocted on the other side before they came here together, and that this was how this would play out? There's lots of different beliefs around that, and I'm not here to share any of that, but what I do see is that um, the mediums that do go deep into their own process and are willing to heal. If I look at the gene keys charts, the pearl is the center of the gene key. It's that gene key that we get to as we do our deep dives. And pearls are at the bottom of the ocean. To find the pearl, we got to take a deep dive. And so it's like these things are showing up for us, and so what Nicole would do is after her experiences with some of these people, she can come upstairs to our house, and I can just sense she's had some heavy time, but she does take her time to, you know, she does take her time to return to herself again, to be able to let go of the experiences of the other people. And so she could speak to that far better than I could. But what I wanted to share around that was just that, it's like the that when we can give ourselves that compassion, and we can give others that compassion in those feeling spaces, I feel it only makes us that much more deeply connected to our own source. and to others. And I know, I am certain from what Sarah is sharing there, that as challenging as it can be, she's obviously a real gift to that community.
Yeah,
I always feel
absolutely.
like yeah.
Absolutely, and it is what when I think about it and think about losing people, and if I think about the people I used to hang around with, I mean, I've lost 6 young people to very
Mhm.
extreme circumstances, very quick passings. Most of them chose their own ways. A lot of them were accidents, and they were all things that were out of my control, out of family's control, out of all that sort of thing. And the only thing you get left to do is to accept the fact that that's it. That's you have to accept it. There's no other choice. And
Mhm.
and if I hadn't have gone through those emotions, and I'm sure Sarah and Nicole have had the same, losing people at a young age, then we couldn't be the mediums today, to help the people that we help, and to help them in the way that we should help them. But back to the subject, back to deep surrender, of today, because we're coming up to the end of the call now, which is, basically there is so much in our lifetime that you say, okay, it is out of our control, and basically it's how you interact in the situation. How do you bring yourself about in the situation? How do you deal with the situation? And I found, like, in the moments where I can surrender to the great possibility, right, that there's a greater meaning or greater plan, far greater than what I can see. Because in most of the time when it got into the anxiety, it was when I was looking straight at it and thinking, I cannot change this, I cannot change that, I cannot do this, I need to release this control. And when I could just take a step back and look at life and think, well, I can release to the fact that there's a greater plan here. Something quite greater in this, and the reason for it happening than what I can see right now. And in surrendering to that, that's when you can get the deeper significance and the feeling of the wisdom coming through of, hold on, that there is a greater plan, there is a greater reason. That a lot of people say, for a lot of the bad things that happen in your life, there's always wisdom behind it. A lot of people say as well, a lot of wise people say, over, when there's discomfort, you will grow. When there's a lot of discomfort, you'll grow a lot. And I see it the same way, but it's like I said before, when in deep water, become a diver and take things step by step. And when you take things step by step and you can move forward and keep moving forward, even if it's inches and feels like centimeters, you will always be moving forward in the right direction, and you'll be always making the right choices. And the main thing is that acceptance of self, that acceptance of spirit, that acceptance of emotion, that acceptance of feeling of who you are, and say, okay, today I feel like this, and today I have these emotions, and today I am resonating with this feeling, these thoughts. But tomorrow you might be a completely different person. Tomorrow you might have different thoughts. Tomorrow you might be seeing things a bit lighter and brighter. And that's the way of moving forward within your life, moving forward within your circumstances, moving forward within the insights and wisdom to what life is bringing you today. And that, for me, Matthew, is a deeper surrender, to the meaning, to the wisdom, to the knowledge that life is offering us something. And whenever I see restriction, I see it as a challenge, or maybe I don't see it as a challenge. Sometimes I see a restriction as a challenge, but sometimes I see it as, oh no, that's all that it means, is that I need to go a different path. And then when I just going back to restriction, there was years ago I used to try and hold on to this job, like, I need to hold on to this job. This is my identity. And when I let go of it, I was free. And when I let go of it, I could take my real path. And when I could surrender to it, I could take the real path that I was meant to do, and started going more into this sort of work, into looking after other people, into being more compassionate about in my life, and choosing a different path. And that takes a lot of deep surrender, but in that was so freeing and so empowering, more empowering than what I thought I had in control. I thought that job was my identity. I thought that was who I am. But when I could release that and accept and surrender, I could surrender to far more wisdom and far more possibilities than I could ever imagine.
Mm.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I would leave people with asking, yeah, it's like, where in your body is restriction showing up, constriction showing up, and where is that calling on you to surrender more deeply to something in your life? And even just asking yourself the question, I feel that's why I had the dream last night that I did about my dog, because I was asking, okay, where in my life do I need to surrender more deeply? Where do I need to release, let go of a need for control somewhere? And your dreams can show you your answers. Your experiences can show you your answers. So just be, and it's like, so often the mind will come up with reasons not to surrender. But as you were saying, it's like as you do surrender deeply, it's like, oh my gosh, life begins to flow more easily. Eventually, that ego mind will start to settle down and realize, oh, that wasn't so bad after all. And actually, it becomes freer. Things flow more easily. Everything you were just sharing there. So I would leave people with that today. It's like, what's something that you could do? Just asking, like, what's something I need to let go of and release? And where am I feeling control in my body? And in what situations? Because right here, right now, you might say, yeah, no, I don't have anything here. But then walk through your day. And as you walk through your day, just be mindful. Just be aware of your body and just be aware how it responds to certain individuals. I know a girl I was talking to would go home and she would feel all this tension on the right side of her body, and then she'd leave the home and that tension was gone. And so she was able to sit with, okay, where am I controlling things or attempting to control things in my home environment? And so she created a lot of awareness for herself just out of that. So I feel like I would leave with folks with that today, is like, and where in your life, just see if you can recall those times when you surrendered deeply. And maybe it was yesterday, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, when you really surrendered more deeply, and how beautiful was that experience? And because every time that we allow ourselves to surrender more deeply, we feel more peaceful. Things flow more easily in life, and even when they don't flow, we're able to practice more surrender, right? And
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, been yet another great chat. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you for watching. It was wonderful to have you all here, everybody. And I hope you've enjoyed. If this has inspired you in any way, please don't feel free to share it. If you want to contact me or Matthew, we've got our links in the comments here. It's been wonderful sharing with you, and thank you for all showing up. Reminds me of one thing. Everyone yesterday, when I was just saying goodbye to some people, I said everyone has a different frequency. Everyone has a different color. Everyone has different colors in their aura. And when we come together as a collective, all those colors melt together like a rainbow, and we create that as a human race. And isn't that a wonderful thing? Okay.
The Rainbow Warriors.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.